Good evening, everyone. We're truly glad to have you back with us tonight. When you think of McDonald's, you probably imagine late-night cravings, golden fries, maybe even a bit of childhood nostalgia. But what if I told you that behind the counter and under the glow of those yellow arches hide some of the most chilling, real-life horror stories ever told? Tonight, we'll uncover disturbing accounts that happened after hours, when the customers are gone, and something else takes their place. Before we begin, drop us a comment below. What time is it where you're watching from? And where in the world are you? We love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, settle in, and remember, you're watching Sleep Horror Stories. My name is Eric Matthews, and I want to share with you all a very disturbing experience I went through a few years ago when I worked at a McDonald's in California during the night shift. I was 19 at the time. I took that shift because I was attending college during the day, and the extra money really helped with my expenses. My parents are originally from El Salvador, but I was born here. Life in the U.S. isn't easy. You've got to work hard for a decent living. Anyway, like I said, I worked nights and the restaurant barely had any customers sitting in. Most people just drove through. There were 4 of us on that shift, and we rotated between the drive-thru, front register, and cleaning duties. That night, I was working the counter, but inside, it was dead. Just one couple sitting at a table, probably coming from party. It was close to 2 a.m. That's when a homeless guy walked in. He was young, maybe 22 or 25, but he looked rough. Not just because of the dirty, torn clothes. His face looked lifeless, disconnected. I figured he might have been high or something. I called over one of my coworkers just in case. We're not supposed to kick them out unless they start bothering people, but if they get aggressive, we're told to call 911. The guy just walked straight into the restroom. Back then, the restrooms didn't need a code. Anyone could go in, and it was unisex. I kept working, handling the few people who came in. An hour passed, and I realized I never saw the guy come out. The place was empty by then, just us employees. I was about to mention it to a coworker when we suddenly saw the guy walk out. He looked pale and barely able to walk. He sat down at a back table and just stared ahead. We left him alone. What else could we do? I went back to cleaning. As I wiped down a table behind him, I heard crying. Quiet but clear. I didn't want to get close. I just turned around and headed to the counter. I told my coworker what happened, and he looked at me and said, "There's nobody at that table." I turned, and yeah, no one was there. The chair was pushed in. I couldn't understand how he vanished so fast in just the time it took me to walk back. Still, I carried on with work. Minutes later, a coworker who had gone to clean the restroom screamed. We all rushed over. She stood against the wall, hand covering her mouth, tears in her eyes. Inside the restroom, that same young man was lying in a pool of blood. He'd slit his left wrist. It was a horrible sight. I froze. I couldn't move or speak. One of my coworkers called 911. Paramedics arrived quickly. They asked us for statements and pulled the security footage. That's when we realized the guy never came out of the bathroom. They asked me again about what I said. I told them he had left the bathroom and sat at the back. But the footage showed me alone, cleaning tables. When I stopped at the one he was sitting at, I just stood there a few seconds, then walked off. He was never on camera. The coroner said he'd been dead for at least an hour. So, yeah, he went into that bathroom and never came out alive. He took his own life in there. Maybe he chose a McDonald's because he hoped someone would find him quickly. People ask if I'm scared, knowing I saw his ghost. But honestly, I just feel sorry for him. I wonder what kind of life he lived that pushed him to that point. After that, I got transferred to another branch, but I stayed in touch with friends from that store. They told me weird stuff started happening at night. Chairs moving by themselves when no one was around, footsteps, strange knocks on the bathroom doors. One night, a customer told the staff someone was crying at a back table. But when they checked, nothing. Another time, my friend heard knocking on the employee restroom door. She thought it was a coworker messing around, but no one had left the front counter, and there were no customers inside. A woman once came to the counter with her kid, freaked out. She said a young man was crying at one of the tables and scared her son. But again, when the staff looked, nobody was there. One coworker said that just before his shift ended at 5 a.m., he went to the restroom and heard crying from inside. He opened the door, and it was empty. They all believe the ghost is that same guy, stuck there forever. This happened 3 years ago, and it's the most traumatic thing I've ever been through. It still haunts me to this day. It all started one night in Florida. I was driving home a little after 10 p.m., and I was starving. I lived alone and knew my fridge was empty. I hadn't had time to buy groceries. So I figured I'd just grab something quick on the way. The only place still open and along my route was a McDonald's. They closed at 11, so I made it just in time. I didn't feel like getting out of the car, so I went through the drive-thru. There were no other cars, none parked, none in line. The place was completely empty. I was actually kind of glad. It meant I'd get my food fast. I spoke into the speaker to place my order, but no one replied. I figured maybe no one was manning the drive-thru, so I waited a bit longer. A few moments later, a young man's voice came through, apologizing for the delay and asking what I'd like. His voice sounded odd, shaky. It's hard to describe, but something felt off. Still, I placed my order. He told me to pull up to the first window to pay and pick it up. When I got there, I saw him through the glass. He looked like he was barely out of high school, maybe 18 or 19. He didn't greet me. Didn't even make eye contact. He looked nervous, really tense. I waited in my car, wondering what was taking so long. There were still no other customers inside. And I didn't see any other employees, just him. It was strangely quiet inside, which is unusual for a fast food place. I was starting to get impatient, so I asked him if it would take much longer. He turned slightly, gave me this look, and said it would be out soon. But his eyes, it looked like he was trying to tell me something. Like he needed help, but didn't know how to say it. I asked if he was okay. Still not looking at me, he quietly said, "Yeah." I didn't know what else to do, so I just parked and waited for my order. Still no cars behind me. Still no movement inside. Eventually, I saw a girl walk up and hand him a brown paper bag, my food. She quickly disappeared again. He handed it to me through the window. I paid in cash, and I thanked him. He didn't say a word. The whole drive home, I couldn't shake the weirdness of that interaction. I even told myself I wouldn't go back to that McDonald's again. But I ate, went to bed, and tried to move on. The next morning, I was getting ready for work with the news on in the background. That's when I heard something that made me freeze. They were reporting a robbery that had taken place the night before at that exact McDonald's. The employees had been held at gunpoint for hours. The robbers waited until the manager arrived to open the safe. And one of the employees didn't make it. Yes, the young man who took my order. The same one who looked me in the eye, or tried to, and couldn't say what was happening. I was in shock. I almost dropped my coffee. My knees went weak. I sat down and just stared at the screen. Did he try to ask me for help? Was there someone behind him with a gun while he was talking to me? Was that why he was so quiet, so tense? I don't know. I'll never know. They never released details about why he was the one killed. But it's something that will weigh on me forever. This wasn't a ghost story, but it was real horror. And sometimes that's even worse.